Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is the Not So Serious Keto video podcast, bumped to Wednesday edition because of the Perfect Keto sale. As I was looking at my list of potential podcast topics for this week, I asked myself, is there anyone I'm going to rub the wrong way this week? Because I've already done oral hygienists, women named Karen, and last week, carnivores. Although the response that I got from the carnivores last week was really pleasantly, well, pleasant. A lot of them agreed with me that the community has gotten a little bit uptight, a little bit more dogmatic, a little bit more in your face, and they don't like it either. I mean, but I think we also all realize that that's the case in any group of people that are passionate about anything, whether it's a hobby, a way of exercise, a way of diet. You're going to have some fraction that are especially vocal and irritated. And I only had one person like that last week that left a comment thanking me sarcastically for reminding him to unsubscribe from me. And I said, okay, that was it. Also last week, I had asked you, my viewers, well, who else would it be? I had asked you to help me come up with some more topics for the podcast or potentially standalone video episodes. And boy, oh boy, did you rise to the occasion. I have got a pretty significant list now, and I thank you for that. Let me take a look at a few of the things here that I'll just cover a couple every week until I start to run out, and then I'll ask for more. But one of the things that people asked for, and I get this request fairly often, is to do a what I eat in a day or what I eat in a week video. And my response to that historically has been, I'm not interested in doing that. I don't find those videos particularly entertaining. So I didn't want to make one myself. But then I started thinking, is it possible that I could be entertaining? I don't know. But what I am going to do is just start filming my dinner meals. And unless I make some really spectacular snack, but filming my dinner meals, not the whole shebang, not the whole baking. It's not going to be a recipe thing. It's just going to be sort of a quick run through of here's what's on my plate and here's what it looks like. And some of you may say, wow, that's great. Can you make a recipe out of that? And maybe I will. Now, the reason I don't do what I eat in a day is what I eat in a day is mostly one meal. I think it's not really OMAD. It's more like, let's see, coffee, a late afternoon snack, and then a meal. I'm not going to convert that into an acronym. But pretty consistently, I start the morning with a Yeti full of coffee here. It's about 3 cups, and usually that'll last me until lunchtime or a little bit after. I sort of sip on it. Great thing about the Yeti, stays warm forever. Then probably late afternoon, I'll have a little snack. Generally, it's probably going to be something like cheese or olives, or I'll just eat some jalapeno peppers or, something, a little slice of some leftover that was in the fridge, and then dinner. So the what I eat in a week will probably be, I don't know whether I'd call it a montage, but just a fairly brief run through of dinner, like 1 minute per meal or something like that. And we'll see how it goes. It'll kind of be a trial balloon, or if you're familiar with lean startup, it would be kind of like a minimal viable product. And we can see if it's any good, if I enjoyed doing it, if you enjoyed watching it. And like I said, I started filming last night. So probably, I don't know if this will be like a Thursday release or a Tuesday release if I wind up doing a weekly cadence, but that's that. So that was one of the requests that I got last week. What's another good one? Okay, non-keto family. How do I deal with being keto in a non-keto family? This is kind of, it's been a continuous, I don't know if I'd say battle, challenge for certain a challenge. And I'm not sure if it got easier when the kids moved out, because there was a point when Courtney was here, Connor was here, Jane was here, Colton was here, and my wife. So it was 5-1, which definitely made things a competition in terms of pantry space and refrigerator space and freezer space. Now it's just Terry and me and periodically Colton. So there's less competition for space, but it's also, I think, it's more difficult for me to do an extended fast, for example, because I'm the cook now. If it was the whole family here, I could just say, Terry, go ahead, you make the food, you make whatever you want for you guys. I'm going to fast. And I think in those instances, my presence at the dinner table wasn't terribly missed because there's a bunch of people. If it's just Terry and me, and I say, no, I'm not eating dinner, then she's going to feel sort of, I don't know, left out or something. So dealing with keto in a non-keto family, how do I do it? First off, when I cook, and I do most of the cooking, I try and make something that is going to be appealing to non-keto people, that's going to taste great, that is not going to appear keto. And then if they want to augment whatever I make with something else, fine. If I'm making steaks, for example, that's a pretty easy one. When you're keto, everyone's going to eat some steak, but then they can augment that with potatoes or whatever, a dessert. So for me, it's really about having the main dish. I've never been super duper into side dishes anyway. I kind of focus on the main dish. So I put myself in charge of the main dish, and it tends to be, well, it's always going to be keto, but it's going to be, one of the main animal groups. It's going to be beef or chicken or pork, occasionally fish, shrimp, seafood, whatever. But that's how I cope with it. Put yourself in charge of the main dish. Put yourself in charge of the protein. And hopefully on this channel, there are plenty of recipes that you can utilize that are keto, but don't necessarily seem keto, or as I sometimes call it, coincidentally keto. The other big challenge that I face is the sheer quantity of junk food that is in this house. My wife, she likes the sugar, she likes the carbs, she likes donuts and crackers and chips and all kinds of munchy type things. Every night she seems to be making popcorn and I'm smelling that. That's a bit of a challenge. And I think the way I attack that is twofold. One, for dinner, I make sure that I'm full. So I'm not going to be tempted when she's making popcorn or having some sort of a snack during the evening when we're watching TV or a movie. I'm not going to be tempted to have any of that. The other thing is making sure that you have easy to consume, essentially already prepared snacks that are ready. Whether that's prepackaged stuff like, Perfect Keto Nola bars or something like that, or beef jerky, or cheese sticks, or something like that. But have something that doesn't require any preparation. So when you do start to have a snack attack, you're not going to be tempted to go to the cookie jar. Instead, you'll just open up the fridge or open up the pantry, and there's already something there that requires no work that you can eat and be satisfied. I think those are essentially my strategies for being keto in a non-keto family. I've also mentioned on the last handful of podcasts sort of my conflicting thoughts on clickbait and whether or not I want to just completely avoid clickbait or whether I want to kind of parody clickbait. And one of the things that I was considering is doing it within the podcast, because in the podcast on the thumbnail, I always have 3 topics, regardless of how many I cover over the course of the podcast. There's 3 in the thumbnail. And it reminded me of back when I used to be at GE, and very often I would be called upon to facilitate long-term meetings. We called them workouts. I don't know if that's a common name or if that's a GE specific thing, but when you would have an extended meeting, a day, a week, whatever, and you would get multiple groups from the business coming and working together on improving a process, oftentimes with conflicting metrics. Actually, this wouldn't be conflicting, would it? Conflicting metrics. And for the most part, all of these people know each other only as a voice on the phone. It's, that jerk from accounting or, that jerk in sales or whatever. And my goal at the start of any workout was to start establishing relationships between people, getting them to know each other on a personal level. Because once you know someone on a personal level, and hopefully then grow to like that person on a personal level, I think it's a lot easier to negotiate with them and to come to consensus on various business processes, even if your metrics are conflicting. So one of the things that I would do as an icebreaker was a game called Two Truths and One Lie, where everybody in the room had to come up with 2 true and hopefully interesting facts about themselves and 1 lie. that hopefully is believable. And then you would share that we'd go around the room, we'd share that and see if people could figure out which one is the lie. And if done right, and by done right, I mean people coming up with something interesting and believable, you would spur a lot of conversation later on at breaks, at lunch, etc. So, if I talked about gardening, for example, and this was back when I was really, really, really hardcore into gardening. Now, I'm still into gardening, but I would have like 26 tomato plants and 30 pepper plants, and people would be like, wow, that's crazy. And I'd love to talk to you about gardening because I'd love to get into gardening. And it fosters relationships. So I'm not sure if what I'll do is make the three topics on the thumbnail be two truths and one clickbaity thing that's a total fake out. Or maybe one of the things I could just start doing in these podcasts periodically is two truths and one lie about me and see if you can figure out which one is the lie. What do you think? Should I do that? Do you think that one would be fun? Let me know down in the comments below. So this weekend, I was chatting with Dennis from Black Tie Kitchen, and he told me that he, for the first time, was recognized in public. Well, not so much public as he got a new job, and he was at his new job, and someone recognized him there. And I think the conversation went, hey, you're that guy that Steve from Serious Keto had on his podcast. He's awesome. Isn't he awesome? Is he as awesome as I think he is? At least that's the way I imagine the conversation going in the narcissistic part of my brain. That is not probably what happened at all. In fact, it was kind of fun living vicariously through Dennis explaining what it felt like. And he told me a little bit anxious about it. And I'm trying to remember my first time being recognized. It was actually during the early part of the pandemic. And I was at Costco and everyone's wearing masks. And I had a phone call actually from Costco's tire department while I was in Costco shopping. And I'm on the phone with the Costco tire guy. And I get off the phone and a woman comes up and points at me and says, "You're Steve from Serious Keto." She recognized me from my voice from an aisle away. So I think that was the first time I got recognized. And of course, I always remember the most recent time. Hi, Michelle. So it was cool. And I'm sure Dennis is going to get recognized more in the future. Interestingly, Connor and Courtney have both been sort of quasi-recognized as well recently. Connor is a physical trainer, certified physical trainer, and he was training a guy who asked him, what are your thoughts on keto? And Connor says it works for some people, and my dad does keto and really likes it. And in fact, he's got a keto channel on YouTube called Serious Keto. And the client says, I know him. I subscribe to him. So that's kind of cool. And Courtney is both a physical trainer as well as a yoga instructor. And one of her customers recognized her / me. Well, I wasn't there, but said, hey, you're on Serious Keto and I watch you and your dad. So kind of cool. It's always fun being recognized. I mention it every time I get recognized. I mention it on this podcast just because it really is a very neat experience. I love having the chance to meet my viewers. And who knows, maybe at some point I will do some sort of official meetup somewhere in the southeast Wisconsin area. And while I am in Hawaii for my son's wedding in August, maybe I'll do something as well. If I can get one of you in Maui and one of you in Oahu to coordinate a little get-together for me. We'll talk about that more as we get closer. I'm currently reading, actually I'm listening to the audiobook of The Laws of Human Nature by, I think it's Robert Greene. It's a really good book. It is very long though. I think the audiobook is like 30 hours long, so it's taking me a while to get through it. And I do kind of, as I go through it, I'm a little bit conflicted because sometimes it almost feels a little bit cynical because he does point out a lot of the either stupid or just bad behavior of humans. And one of the things in the most recent chapter that he covered are toxic personality types, one of which is the highly critical person. And I see this a lot on the internet. Not just my channel, but everywhere, and I'm sure you see it as well. And he really sort of dives into the psyche of those people and how very often it's seated in their own unhappiness or perhaps even a hypocritical sort of behavior. So they secretly crave something. For example, maybe it's someone who's standard American diet or vegan. Let's go there. Let's say it's a vegan who comes on to this channel or a carnivore channel and starts saying how bad it is and how you're going to kill yourself with meat. According to Robert Greene, there's a percentage of people that are that way simply because they themselves have a deep-seated craving for that thing that they're opposed to, the meat, for example. But what's interesting is as I read through this book and the various examples that Robert Greene gives, you do start to pick up on it a lot more in life, and in a good way, I believe. I mean, yeah, you're recognizing that someone is toxic, but then rather than responding in turn with a toxic comment of your own, you just kind of say, oh, okay, well, that's probably because this person is secretly unhappy or maybe publicly unhappy or secretly a hypocrite and they enjoy meat or pornography, whatever that thing is that they are rabidly and vocally opposed to. The other thing is sort of the gotcha behavior when people want to just point out the most nitpicky little flaws. Like, and I'm guilty of a lot of little flaws, so I'm pretty easy target for that. Someone could make a full-time job out of just uh, pointing out in videos where I mispronounce a word or misspeak or something like that. Like I referred to egg life wrappers as egg white wrappers, for example. But I was looking at an Instagram post of David Goggins. I think he's preparing to try to break the world record for pull-ups again. And someone pointed out on his side, they're like, "Oh, that looks like liposuction scar." Liposuction? See what I mean about me mispronouncing things? Liposuction scars. And he's like, "No, that's those are stretch marks. I mean, he was over 300 pounds. You're going to get stretch marks. I've got stretch marks when I got heavy too. Um, most of mine are kind of around the lower back and buttocks, so I won't be showing those off on Instagram. But yeah, it's just some people, they just want to point out the little things. And if you want to point out the little things with me, I guess I'm cool with that now that I've read that chapter in the book, Laws of Human Nature. But that is going to be it for this podcast. Next week, I may shift the podcast to Tuesday since Monday is Memorial Day. Wednesday, maybe do the what I eat in a week, see how that goes. Thursday, product review. Friday, cooking video. Thank you once again for the suggestions in terms of podcast topics, and thank you, as always, for watching or listening. Thanks.